All right, welcome everybody from the HMS world. It is so exciting to think that after months and months of planning and replanning and replanning and planning, that we're about to start school. Our kids have not walked the halls in 100. Well, when they get here on Thursday, we've not walked the halls on 184 days, and our halls need them, and they're ready for them. So, welcome. We are going to do a brief presentation today, answer your questions, and the hope is that parents and students are comfortable with coming to school on Thursday, whether it's a Wednesday remotely or Thursday in person for those kids, or virtually, which we have all three schools up and running and are ready for your children, safely, I might add. So I'm going to start my presentation and we will take questions at the end, but welcome all to our middle school parent orientation. It is really just a night that gets you all ready for school. I realize that there's anxiety from teachers, students, kids, and parents about coming back in this. When you've missed school for 6 months, it's really a big deal. I want to take the time to thank the people who made this possible, which are the parents, you out there who surveyed and said, hey, we want to come back to school. We want to do this safely. I want to thank the Hanover administration, Superintendent Ferrin, Assistant Superintendent St. Ives, and the Assistant Superintendent Tom Rabb, and Keith Guyette for having us look at all the options, follow the guidelines on a daily basis, and plan for this upcoming school year, in making it possible in person. Our school committee for voting that in and saying, you know, we know that we want to have kids in school. We know that that's a priority. We know that we have kids that did really well virtual, and they might be going virtual again. We know that we had kids that did really well in school, might have struggled a little in the last virtual phase or the last remote phase for the end of last year. And we need those kids in here. They need to be in here. But we're lucky that we have the ability to do both of those things. We're going to have a 7-8 virtual academy, a 5-6 virtual academy, and then a 5-8 hybrid right here. So very exciting. I need to thank our teachers for also making that a priority. A lot of districts around are going completely remote. And it came down to our school committee, our administration, our teachers, based on parent want and understanding, and our safety, our health and safety guidelines, where Nurse Joelle helped tremendously to get us to that point to say, we can do this and we can do it safely. And this building is prepared for having all kids back in at 3 feet, 6 feet while eating lunch, and it's built for all kids in safely at 6 feet. So that was the priority. That's what we've been doing for the last couple of months. And that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit today, so that you feel ready and safe to come back to school. Today's agenda, we're going to do introductions, expectations, routines, kind of like how things will work, and then we will take your questions. The goal for this year is to provide the best possible education for the students under any circumstances, knowing perfectly well that we could be remote, the hybrid that we're in, or back in school. We've got to plan for all those things, and we actually have to be planned to be pretty interchangeable, and I think that we've done a decent job at being able to do that and pull that off so that we can give our kids the best under any circumstances. We did a pretty good job last year. I need to thank our teachers for what they provided around from March to June last year. They did it well, without a ton of instruction, they were collaborative, innovative, and they brought learning to your kids. And I would say as well as anywhere around us surrounding communities. We have a lot of room to improve, and that's what this year will be like, and that's what we've been training for. So with that being said, I would like to introduce in my screen first, it's Stephanie Murphy. If you could wave and say hi, Stephanie. I'm Murphy, our special education administrator. Our assistant principal, Mr. Barrett, Joel Barrett, and our famous and wonderful, thank you, Mr. Barrett, for all your work over the last couple of days, especially with our students and our and our school, actually. And our very famous nurse, Joelle Casey. So she makes it her business to know about your kids, and she does. She's been wonderful. She's a wonderful resource throughout this whole time for teachers, students, parents, and myself. So pretty awesome. For those of you who didn't know, Nurse Casey was here today as we were COVID screening the entire staff of Hanover Middle School. That concludes our public, our school departments such as food and what else?
We also screened facilities, the high school, Cedar, and Center.
Okay, perfect. As well as the South Shore VOTEC, correct?
They were screened 2 weeks ago. They were not screened again today.
Okay, perfect. Well, so there we go. So now you know, everybody, these are all people that you can come and ask questions to at any time. All right, so safety and security. That is the first priority for us, is to keep all students safe in person and virtually at HMS. That is the task, to have kids back, but do it safely. And again, there's different people who have different needs, whether they're in person on a hybrid model or virtually. The students, for our safety, every year trainings that we do, the students will still have both fire drills and ALICE training. That's not going to change. It may look a little different, but it's not going to change. Our staff has been trained with both police and fire, with Mr. Barrett at all 4 schools. So we take that very seriously. That doesn't change in this time. As far as COVID, we will work on protocols and procedures with your kids on a regular basis. Mr. Barrett made a video today that you'll be able to see, that kind of gives you some ins and outs of what it's like at the middle school and what to expect, so your kids can view that tomorrow. But really, the protocols and procedures of mask breaks, of how we travel in the building, how we're socially distancing, and we've got kids here, so of course we're going to remind them. I just need you to know, as parents, that we're going to remind them safely. We take it very seriously, but as a person who, again today, walked out of my office without my mask on and then quickly ran back. Even adults make those mistakes, so it's one of those things that we're going to need to do this together, and we understand that kids make mistakes, and we'll be working with students and with parents around that. We have 2 wonderful nurses, as I introduced Nurse Casey, but we also have a second nurse, Nurse Goldsloff. So for parents at home, you understand there is, unfortunately, we're at a time when we need to have a COVID health office, and we have another, like a triage health office, so that we can do all the regular things that happen on a regular day in case there was somebody who had COVID-like symptoms. So it's a very safe place, and that's how we're going to navigate through, with always having resources. So if somebody has that, there are protocols and procedures for staff to follow and for myself to follow. So it's one of those things. Now, we've done a number of things, adaptations to the building. We had sinks put in, because obviously we're going to wash hands as a priority. That is the number one way to clean your hands. Obviously hand sanitizer, which is excellent as well, we'll talk about. But we've had 4 double sinks put in. Kids are only going to be allowed to go in the bathroom 1 at a time. So those sinks will be helpful, but it's 1 at a time. But we've had 2 sets of sinks down by the cafeteria where kids can wash their hands on their way to lunch. And we've had 2 down by the gymnasium where kids can wash their hands if we have lunch down in the cafeteria. So the signage that we just talked about around the building, there are positive message and stickers all over the place, on the floors, on the walls, on the ceilings, that really just remind kids to wear their masks, to walk this way. So we're not a building that can the high school, if you go to the high school follows in one direction. It's a one direction building. We don't have that luxury here because we're kind of like a box. And we have 2 longer hallways. So it's not really that case. So we're going to social distance by staying on the right of the hallways. And there's signage for that all over the place. It's well done. Our custodians have done a fantastic job at getting this place ready. And when kids come in, they're going to be excited. We have furniture. We have over 850 pieces of furniture that are new to us. some brand new. We have 525 new desks, and we have 250 desks that came over from Sylvester. Basically, because we were a table school, and the table doesn't allow enough space for kids to socially distance in the room. So they were 5-foot tables. I need 6-foot space for the most part, some 4. But we had to go and transform this whole building really over that. Now you'll see a lot of those tables that are still in our cafeterias because that's how we're going to do lunch. And I'll explain that to you in a little while. And our cafeteria was pretty much redone to safely accommodate at least 120 people. Mr. Barrett, thumbs up, over 120 in the cafeteria, which is why we've made the decision to be able to have the cafeteria and lunch, because we can socially distance at 6+ feet away, and kids have their individual single 5-foot tables. So a lot of work that's been done and gone into the preparation for this, you know, especially over the last couple of weeks when we really been able to start to make some final decisions. Health expectations, wear a mask. So this is what these next couple of slides I've shared with your kids. And as you can see, there's little signs like "thank you for wearing your mask," and also that guide where you can wait outside the bathroom. But the expectation, and I told the kids, it really provides 2 things. One, it's mandatory for kids to wear masks unless there is a specific individual accommodation that needs to have that, which does happen from time to time. But it protects you from other people, from nasal and mouth vapor from other people. It protects theirs from you. Now that's the actual physical piece. The other thing it does is an emotional piece where people who may be really concerned, people have very different feelings about this right now, have very different feelings about masks. But this mask does bring some safeness to some people who really need to see that. And since it's the rules, it makes a lot of sense to me that you understand and that your kids understand that. Because some people might say that person's not wearing the mask and then all of a sudden become anxious. So it's not the end of the world. We're going to work through everybody with that, but we're going to really work on kids making sure. The kids in the summer who were in school over the summer and in camps over the summer really didn't have a problem with masks. So I'm not overly anticipating a problem. And we will allow mask breaks as frequently really as needed. I mean, that's a real thing. Social distancing. The floors we've marked off 6 feet from every way in every direction as far as you go. So as you walk down the hallway, there's little reminders that say, hey, I should probably speed up or slow down or wait, right? And I think that's a big deal. Again, these are all training things that we're going to go over with your kids the first couple of days. Wash hands thoroughly. People say make sure it's hot water. I've been told hot water is okay, but the most important thing is the soap that breaks down the enzymes. Am I correct with that, Mrs. Casey?
Yes, we want to really encourage hand washing with soap and water whenever possible. Also, we will have Purell stations throughout the building for in between those times.
So washing hands, sanitizing, keep hands to yourself. This is a really hard one. I almost broke it 5 times because a natural reaction for us here is to high five kids that we see, say, great job, so proud of you, nice to see you. All those things are natural, which we have to kind of reinvent how we support kids and redo it. So we were doing air fives. I don't love them, but so I'm gonna have to figure out a different way to do that. But it's one of those things that it's different ways to tell kids that it's all right, or to demonstrate or to show them, because even sometimes your smile is covered up. So it's one of those things we're going to go out of our way to make sure that kids know it's okay and have those conversations. But it's really hard for 5th through 8th graders sometimes to keep their hands to themselves. They're playing with they see their buddies in the hallway. They, you know, again, hopefully we're socially distanced so you can't get that hand. But those are all things that, you know, as teachers and as administrators that we're going to help and watch through. Now, one of the things which does not fit a middle school model so awesome, especially at the upper grades, is that kids stay in a homeroom. So to do this and come back safely, the recommendation is that kids move as little as possible to other cohorts so that we can, to other groups of kids. So it happens sometimes, it's gonna need to happen sometimes. Teachers are gonna need to change from time to time, but the idea of contact tracing and mitigation says that right now, with what we know, it makes sense to have kids in a classroom together, which creates some scheduling conflicts and things that are not ideal for what I consider to be a middle school model, or grades 6 and 7, really, 7 and 8, who generally have their own schedules and have their own opportunities. And for 7th grade parents who I sent letters to about advanced accelerated math, my plan is to have a meeting with you via Zoom, and I'll send out an invitation to everybody I sent a letter to kind of talk about that and how we're going to accomplish our goals this year. But the homeroom stays. The kids staying in the homeroom really does cut down on some things. Now, what I mean by that is they're not going to stay in their homeroom all day. We're going to utilize outside space. We're going to utilize motion breaks. We're going to utilize outdoor classrooms when at all possible. But they're going to stay with their class. And what this really means is no other kids are going to sit in their seats. Nobody else is coming in and creating any more touch points for our kids. In this model, the teacher will move, and I'll get into that a little bit more as far as it goes. Now, our students do have lockers. Everybody has a locker. We're not going to start off using them this year as far as it goes, but they do have them. The idea that is going to be that kids bring a backpack. Now, in that backpack, makes sense to have a snack. Waters, because water fountains are not being able to be used and hydrated, is hydration is key to staying healthy, to staying involved in part of your classes, learning at your best. So it's kind of like those hierarchy of needs. But include supplies. Not all the supplies are on the supply list. Your teachers will keep you current as far as your students' teachers will keep them current as far as what they need to bring in. Some of those supplies are for when you're working at home remotely. So that's a big deal. But also included in your backpack, some type of towel, maybe a thin yoga mat or something where we go outside and you can have a place to sit, whether we go outside and eat lunch outside on the grass, or it's a science class that makes it outside, or writing class that makes it outside, anything in between. But it's very important that we don't share supplies from there. So it's one of those things that it is important. When your kids get here, they'll have supplies of their own that we provide, that they can stay with them in their area. They are the only kids who will have those desks. But anything else, Mrs. Casey, that I left out of that? Or Mr. Barron?
No, I think that was good. I did want to just reiterate that with wearing a mask, what we're looking for is a 2 to 3 layered cloth mask that does secure around the ears. No single layer gaiters. We want to really make sure that if we are taking the measure of wearing a mask, that it's going to be a mask that can actually help us. Thank you.
And Mr. Barrett, that handbook is being finalized and will go out for expectations. Really, COVID-19 addendum to the handbook, correct? Perfect. So remote expectations for parents at home. There are really 3 types of remote. We have the virtual academy remote students who are completely remote, virtual all the time, and have a different set of teachers and core. There is the remote from class to home, which the majority of our classes have. So for instance, a teacher at the beginning of every class, just so you know, a teacher at the beginning of every class will take attendance, and at minimal kind of get the take attendance, give directions, and whether those kids stay or the kids at home rather stay in class, depending on the lesson, or are given their directions to go off and work independently, is one option. The other option is room and Zoom, which would be pretty much for the whole class. Your kids are in school and at home learning together through the use of technology. And then really anything in between there, right? Because I can see from taking attendance, that's a mandatory check-in and say, all right, guys, do you understand what you're supposed to know and be able to do? Great. All right, now you can go off and work independently, and here's the kids in class. To room and Zoom, where all kids are engaged, whether they're at home or in the same lesson at the same time with the teacher via technology or Zoom, and are working, and then anything in between, so from a 5-minute check-in to a 48-minute class to a 15-minute, all right, I'm going to give all the instructions, or I'm going to do a mini lesson, and everybody's going to be with me, and then I'm going to send people off to work in their groups. So that's really the case. The third type of remote that we have, and we have several cases, or a couple cases here, where teachers are Zooming from their homes into the room and into your homes, so the group of kids that are here, and as well as Zooming into the kids at home. Now, in the class that's here, there will be another adult that supports that class. You know, I have a lot of confidence in this. You know, at this time, for students, teachers, you know, we've got to really make accommodations and think out of the box on how we meet everybody's needs. And I do believe that I have got a staff that can pull this off and do it well. So those are the three types of remote. For a student learning at home, super important to have a designated learning place. A place where, whether it's a desk in your room, whether it's a place downstairs away from your brother and sister, everybody has their own space where they can really focus and get their schoolwork done, because the expectation is we're going to be going through school just like it's a regular day. Now, from listening to surveys, I totally understand that some kids struggled with that. I need you at home to realize we're going to try and help with that. We hear that. I can tell you from a superintendent to our building principals to our school committee, we want all the kids to come back safely. We want that. That is what, and we're going to try to do our best under all circumstances to make sure that all of our kids are engaged. And I talked to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders this week about it's being their responsibility, that you shouldn't have to be hounding them as parents. And we'll work on that too. And they can do this. They can do this. Students need to be on time. That's for every class. Now, I will tell you the hard part will be being on class, will be teachers getting to class on time as they're trying to move from place to place, right? So if they're walking down and they might have a Zoom that starts at 9:15 and they may not get there till 9:17. So I will work we're gonna fix those routines and work them out, but we won't know how quick that is until we're looking at that in real time. We're inventing a lot of this stuff. Like, there is no playbook for this. We're trying to determine what best practices are and what works best for our students and our families. So I'm going to need your input. I'm going to need teacher input. You know, our teachers have really made it a priority to be innovative and learning, as well as what our kids can do now that they couldn't. Our kids, although I don't love screen time, our kids are so much more technologically advanced than they were at the current grade from 6 months ago. There's no doubt about it. So attendance is mandatory in the morning. Now, Virtual Academy 7 and 8 and 5 and 6 will be a little bit different in how they do that. So on 7th and 8th, kids will have classes that are specific, same content, but they have a little bit more freedoms on their time, and Mrs. Ireland is going to work that out with them. But here in school, attendance is taken at the beginning of Zoom, and at the beginning of the day in a homeroom, and Zoom students and kids that are in person have to both be there. And that's the same for every class. Active participation is important. You know, it's one of those things where this is a little bit different, because last year we kind of said, all right, well, they're with us, we just know. But kids are going to be graded on this stuff. They're going to be graded on what they do in remote and in person. So there's a lot of pieces. So when we're on a virtual Wednesday or on a virtual any part of class, the expectation is that kids are actively participating. I explained to your kids the other day that they come here for themselves. They know that. If you're in 6, 7, 8, we've been talking about it, and they're here to extend on their toolbox. So important, because that opens their skill set. That, you know, whether they like a class or don't like a class, what they learn and what they take away, it makes them make well-informed decisions, maybe about what they want to, where they want to go to school, what they want to do, or what they don't want to do. Absolutely. Students will follow a daily schedule, as I mentioned several times. This next one is a big one: appropriate dress. So when you're remote, and that's in Virtual Academy or on your remote days, the expectation is that we're up and ready to learn, dressed, not in bed. It has to be away from that area. So we have to take this, we have to take it very seriously as far as that goes. So although it's great sometimes to get out, roll over and say, hey, look, I'm in bed in a Zoom, not appropriate for what we're trying to do, not conducive to teaching and learning. So I would appreciate that. We're up and ready to go. Obviously, if there's a reason or a concern that you have where a student for someday is struggling with that, please contact the teacher and we'll figure out how to get you involved. Maybe it's okay for that day to leave your screen off, and we'll understand as long as you're communicating with your yellow thumbs and doing other parts, other interactive pieces. But the expectation is that you're visible and part of the class. Now, respect and responsibility. This is something that works for everything, and it really guides behaviors, but it also has to guide their learning. We're expecting responsible kids, which, do I expect it all right off the top? No, but that's going to be the work we do with them. It's kind of like organization. Those are focuses, things that we focus on. So important to us, so important to their success. Is every kid going to be perfect with this? No, but we're going to work on improving every kid, as we do with everything. Now, one question that comes up is, how will my student connect with the classroom when they are home? I kind of explained that a little bit early in my 3 ways of remote, but once again, it is, if you're in a hybrid and there's students, because this is really hard. Hybrid is actually the hardest thing to do. Fully remote's easy, fully remote, I mean, fully in school is the goal and awesome. Although we will, after this, we will have learned a ton of new skills, but hybrid's really challenging because you might have one teacher in a room who's trying to manage both, to do a room and Zoom well. And so we're looking at best practices, but every class will have attendance, a check-in at the minimum. And the longest extent of that would be a room and Zoom for the entire lesson, or almost the entire lesson. And my teachers, or our teachers, the staff at HMS, are going to try everything on that spectrum, from check-in and attendance to room and Zoom, and see what works the best. Because the other thing is, it was brought up at school committee meeting today, the screen time is not something we all want. So if we're going to be creative, too much screen time is not what we want. We need to be creative on how we craft our lessons to be able to do a mixture of those things. And we're going to be creative on how we incorporate that. So we've had a ton of training with Zoom and breakout rooms, and how we're going to use the Google platform for ease for students and parents. And I think we've come a long way since the end of last year. Well, I know we've come a long way since the end of last year. But that's how students will connect with the classroom when they are home on their remote days. General other expectations, again, this is a slide I shared with you kids. Be respectful. And what I say is, be respectful to each other, be respectful to your peers, your teachers, your property, yourselves. And with that comes a whole bunch of responsibility. As we move on, the more freedom, I've said to your kids for years, with freedom come responsibilities. And the more responsible they are, the more opportunities we're going to have, whether it's in a virtual world or in school in person. So that's the case. In all scenarios, be present, be on time, be present. Presence is something that we've talked about a lot over the last couple of years. So yes, you're here, but we want you in the moment. We want you learning. We want you focused on the learning standards that we're supposed to be doing. We're going to need people to adhere to procedures and protocols, without a doubt. From walking on the right side, social distancing, washing hands, making sure you respect other people's space. And I think the word for this year is going to be flexible. And I think that's a really, I appreciate all the parents and they're flexible. And I realize that that this is not ideal, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but it's not ideal for anyone. Our job and what we're tasked with is making the best out of any situation and not out of any circumstances that come up. And I think that we're expecting the kids to do that as well, as we will be a reflective and adaptive to make things work better for kids. And as we're looking, I hope, my positively thinking, I'm hoping we're back to school 100% soon. The next couple of weeks are going to show us that we know how to do it safely. Which is a wonderful thing. And then, of course, as always for students, the expectation is work hard. A lot of people are working hard. My hope is that kids really missed it, and they want to come back and they have that thirst for knowledge and connectedness, and whether it's virtual or in person, we're going to do that. We're going to do it well. Now, here's a sample of grade schedule, just so you know. And we did make some tweaks to make it a safer place and also adhere to the surveys. And I need to thank our staff, because this schedule is driven by staff, and the need to meet the expectations of cutting down sharing kids, cutting down cutting down the amount of teachers that, if let's say that we were remote or at any given time, since we are partially remote or virtual, cutting down on the number of people that meet with your students at any one time. So the way that this currently, I'll use grade 5 as far as it goes. If you're looking down, it would say a win block. Now that is a what I need block. It is a replacement of extended learning. It's important. It's where students get what they need. And we have data that tells us, and we have data from iReady. We will have data from iReady that says we can work on these areas. We have data from teachers who know what kids are supposed to know and be able to do, and what they've demonstrated and how they've demonstrated their understanding. But that win block is really a time that's built into every day that says, what do I need? And that's when we're going to work with kids based on their individual needs. In this group, all right, so this team, this class here would only have, this team of teachers, whether it's 3 5th graders, would only be working with one of the art teachers. So let's say Mr. File would only be working with Mr. File in this team. So Mr. File is only going to the 3 rooms that the other teachers are gone with. He's going to support their academic support in their win block. And the teacher schedules will rotate around when their time is. So we still have academic support at grade 5 and 6. We feel like that's a very important and beneficial time. We have math, lunch, recess, still staples. Recess and PE will look a little bit different. People have to social distance. We'll take masks off, and how far away we are to each other is always important. It will not be a time where we're shooting hoops, but we will look at that and watch that and evolve as we can. English, social studies, and science. And again, for the 5th grade parents, in 5th grade, we really wanted to prioritize math and ELA time, because if you're at most districts in an elementary school, that's what their priority is, and we make sense. Science and social studies is super important. It's generally split up a little bit more science and social studies, but that block is taught by one teacher as far as it goes. Now, very similar for the 6th grade, except they have their own history class. So they are teams of 3, but every teacher has their own history class. So every homeroom teacher teaches a history as well. When we get to 7 and 8, same idea in both of these. For instance, if you look at this grade 7 schedule, the person who works with this is our computers teacher, so Mr. Naylor would be working with this group here. This is not a definitive etched in stone schedule, so I don't want anybody to think that's my homeroom, but every specialist we have will be working with a team. And so all the 7th grade homerooms on team A might have Mr. Naylor or whoever the specialist is in that time. Of course, we have 2 foreign languages at 7th grade. We have French and Spanish. And then if you're looking at our 8th grade homeroom, same ideal as the other. We also have that win block that is going to give our kids times to give what they need. So the idea behind it is that kids stay with their groups, obviously. So teachers are going to be moving to each one of those classes. So they'll stay in their room. My hope is that as often as possible, we can find ways to get movement breaks and take kids to the outside, because we believe that's good for kids. 1, fresh air, 2, mass breaks, 2, 3, movement. And the idea of not staying in one class the all day is really a priority for us. However, that's going to work out on individual days at individual times and based on weather. By the way, we're coordinating with the other 4 schools. I don't generally put the schedules out before the first day of school, but ironically, since our first day is virtual, we will do that. Please know, I'll get into that when the first day of schools are up. So first day of school is this Wednesday. Is remote for all students, whether you're in hybrid or you're in our virtual academy. Teachers and teams will be sending Zooms and the agendas to the first day of school. It will not be a regular first day for some teams. For some teams will run through their first schedule, because on every Wednesday teachers will give students an overview of the week ahead. So I don't love this, but Wednesday is the new Monday. So since we start on our Wednesday, so and our hybrids go the next day, the next 4 days actually. So our remote and in class the next 4 days groupings. The idea is there will be class on Wednesday on a half-day schedule for teachers. Kids are expected to have work for the remainder of the day in each one of their core subjects or each one of their subjects. But what will happen is on Wednesdays, a portion of class, a portion of overview for the week ahead, and then things to do independently after, let's just say after lunch, if that makes sense. Kids will break for lunch and then have to work independently to complete their work and get themselves organized and ready for the next 4 days. On a regular remote Wednesday, teachers have synchronous lessons on a scheduled half-day basis, and from 7:45 to 11:45, and then our students will work a full day responsibility-wise. So I left responsibility in there because when I met with the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students, I said, you have to understand this is on you. And you have to take that ownership. You have to own this, and you have to live up to that challenge, and you have to be responsible. I understand that from surveys, parents are concerned about that. I think the expectation is going to have to be there, and things are going to be graded. And so we will have to reach out when we have kids that might be falling a little bit behind, or that we might be worried about for any reason, as well as praise the ones who are doing what they're supposed to be doing and working hard. I mean, positively reinforce that behavior and that work ethic and that responsibility. Super important to us. So that's the first Wednesday of school. And then following down the bottom is what every other Wednesday will be like. Teachers do have the ability to change those and create different learning environments for that day, but they do need to notify you on that, and that needs to be clearly communicated. A lot of teachers have a lot of wonderful ideas around how to do that. So that brings us to our first in-school day. And I'm going to start with drop off and pick up. So students arrive between 7:15 and 7:38. We used to have people get dropped off between 6:45 all the way up till before then. Unfortunately, that's not really an option, because now kids are going to have to come in and go to homers, and I'll get into that in 1 second. So if a kid arrives at 7:15, he's going up to his homeroom or her homeroom, or into his homeroom or her homeroom. So two major ways. If you're going to walk here or ride a bike, like I've had a lot of people ask, that's totally possible. We have a place to lock your bikes up or place your bikes. And then you're going to enter through the same way. So I'll explain. By bus, drop off. First, you're on a bus list if you responded to the survey saying that you wanted to be a bus rider. If you didn't do that, then you're not on this list, and you need to contact myself or Mr. Barrett. Bus lists will go out tomorrow morning. There will be assigned seats on the bus. So basically, unless you're a family member, the only place to sit is on every other seat. So one person to a seat. And if you're a family member, you sit two to a seat, and then that is how they're going to maximize space. Really challenging to do the bus routes and the bus list. Every time that we had to do any type of schedule change, immediately we had to go make sure that the buses were able to handle that and coordinate that. It's been a lot of work. That is one of those things I need to thank Mr. Engel and the bus company, Mr. Rabb, and all the district's administrators who are making, our counselors who are making schedule changes and doing that on a regular basis. But there will be assigned seats. In a bus, they'll come into the driveway, take a right at the first parking lot, and go around and be dropped off by the cafeteria. There'll be a big white tent there that's going to be up, as we have 3 big white tents that are coming for places for us to go during a school day out in the exterior. So we're excited about that. I'd like to thank Kelly Lawrence for all of her support and face with that, and Mr. Barrett for making a few phone calls. But we have that opportunity to have that outdoor space that is under a tent. But the bus will pull right up there. Kids will get out, socially distanced, one at a time, 6 feet away, and then walk in the door. So I'll get to that in a second. So they're going to come off. Students will exit and go through so each grade level has a correct entrance and exit. So our 5th graders, we kind of did that with them and showed it with them on their first day. They're going to come in the 5th grade, the main doors, and only they will come in the main doors until later in the day when you'd be technically marked as late. They're going to come in the main doors, go right down the 5th grade hallway, because it leads you right to the 5th grade hallway. The 6th grade if you're familiar with where EDP was, that's in the middle of the building, really, that you can see from the front where you see the classrooms, that's not cafeteria, is a sixth grade hallway. That door opens up right into the sixth grade hallway. Kids go right or left, and they will be in their homerooms. The seventh grade will look like they're going to be coming into the main entrance, but they're going to come in to the main entrance, and there's a door to the left. That goes right upstairs to the seventh grade hallway. They walk down to the back, right to the seventh grade hallway. Again, 5, 6, 7, there's no touching, no close connectiveness. They kind of really separate, socially distanced. And then grade 8 will come in, walk all the way to the side of the building, almost where the access road is, and then they're going to go in the entrance on that side of the building. Those doors will be open, so there's no touch points, and we will shut them. We'll have people there, staff there to support them, and we will shut the doors right at 7:40. In which case, anybody after that time has to go in the main entrance and check in because they're going to be tardy. Vehicles, so that's how the bus students buy a vehicle. Vehicles pull up, they come in straight, keep going straight to our bend, and pull up as far as you can. When you pull up as far as you can so that no other cars are, as far as you can and still be able to go around, we'll be out there to direct traffic. As far as you can, almost at that sixth grade entrance, open your doors. It helps if the kids are sitting on the door side, on the sidewalk side of the car, to get out safely, social distance, and walk to their entrance designated by grade. This one is one where we really require people to pull up to the next, that allows the most people to drop off at one time, okay? So we will be out there directing traffic, just like we did for the meet and greet, which was awesome. So that's that. Now, as far as picking up, when you get picked up at the end of the day by buses, we will help kids get out there. All of our buses are in order from A to N, so they're in alphabetical order, one row into 2 rows. So they'll learn that routine really quickly. The buses are in the same position every day, and that's important for kids. Pick up after school is going to be, kids are going to be coming out, and they're going to have to be socially distanced as they wait for parents to come up and pick them up. So it worked out pretty well the other day. Kids were pretty good about understanding their 6-foot. Masks are on, and that is how we are going to do that and do that safely. School lunch. There are 4 lunches by grade. No lunch exceeds the 120 that we have. I think our largest lunch is 115 or 113 on any given day. Students will be seated 6 feet away, as I explained. They have their own tables and their individual tables. Tables need to be assigned. We don't love this, obviously, because one of the most important things is to have kids be excited about coming to lunch and seeing their friends. At first, I say with them all the time, with freedom comes responsibilities. At first, we're going to need to tell people where to sit. Mr. Barrett has a whole bunch of ideas on how to make lunch more fun, from music to movies to trivia, to anything that we can do to kind of engage kids. But I will tell you, after a couple of weeks and we get into the routines, we will be asking for student input on where they sit, and we can make a seating chart. But we do need to have a seating chart for mitigation purposes. We need to know who's sitting next to who in case someone gets sick, and then we need to know they've been in contact with. So there are 2 entrances. So lunch, there's a couple exciting things here. There are 2 entrances that we've worked out. Now, every day your kids can have a hot meal or a cold meal, right? So there's the main lunch, and then there's generally going to be something like a Caesar wrap or whatever it is, and they'll let you know. They're grab and go. So our cafeteria staff is phenomenal. And they take pride in their lunches, and I think that's important. And they want to provide a hot and a cold lunch or choice still, even under these times, but it is a grab and go. And so the way that will happen is in our 2 entrances, and Mr. Barrett, you can correct me if anything's wrong. Our 2 entrances, kids will come in, grab their lunch, and go to their seat, following arrows and a specific flow. There are, then they will sit, eat their lunch, and when they need to throw their things away, they get up, but they are also responsible for cleaning their area. Mr. Barrett and I will be there to help with that. But one of the things that's really cool until December 31st is that lunches are free for all students. This will cut down on time. It will cut down on kids being close to each other. It'll cut down. This is just a wonderful thing, that the state has, that Hanover has been able to procure through the state. And it's great. So if a kid forgets his lunch or her lunch, your lunch is there. It's free. There's no, all they have to do is take a number count. And that's pretty awesome. We also offer a grab and go breakfast. So please take use of that. That is also free. I think I skipped. So there was supposed to be a first day of school. I must have erased it. There was supposed to be a first day of school for it when you come to school, and I kind of explained it with how you come to school. So kids are going to go into their homerooms. So they're going to stay. Fifth goes into your homeroom. We're going to be out there to direct you because those kids might not know where their homeroom is. So there'll be people with clipboards and your child's name on them, ready to take them with smiles on their faces, through their masks, through their kind ways. I can't stress enough how important that is and how much we care about kids and how much we know how important that nice, calm communication, demeanor means to them. In fifth grade, these people have been phenomenal at welcoming in new fifth graders their whole time. And so does sixth grade, and so does seventh grade, and so does eighth grade. So we've got a staff of people who really care about your kids. So they're going to go to their homerooms. They're going to go get their routines, and they're going to get used to their routines. They're going to go into all the things that they're going to have questions. We're going to go through protocols, which is why we kind of did it virtually, because any group meeting with a whole grade is probably going to be done virtually for us by Mr. Barrett and myself for some time. Obviously, when we have them at lunch, we're going to be able to utilize that time to go over expectations and rules. And that's phenomenal. But, for the larger big things and how we collaborate, I think that's what I need parents to know, is that we're really looking at creating wonderful experiences for your kids. There's a lot of history and stuff here. One of the things that always comes up, and it's come up by parents already, are we going to have Harvest Fest and Harvest Jam? So for the group out there who does not know, Mr. Schumacher did retire. So he's kind of a living legend, and we love him and we'll miss him. However, Harvest Fest and a Harvest Jam of some sort will go on. This year, it's not going to go on the way it has in the past for this year. But we do look at keeping those traditions and priorities. And as far as Washington D.C. Museum of Science and Squanto, those things are up in the air. But if things remain current, then those are not options that we're going to have at this time. That makes sense. But we're going to have to figure out different ways to hold on to traditions, but as well create some of our own new things. And I think that's kind of an exciting thing. But kids will follow their schedule for that first day, go through the lunch procedure, which I said, and end their day with us trying to make sure that they find their buses and socially distance on their way out. So as far as HMS beliefs, the most important thing is that we're back in school, hybrid and or virtual. And that's based on what families need, what kids want, what kids need, what teachers need. And that's the goal. And that's so exciting to us, because I cannot wait for these kids to be back. That was the big takeaway of seeing the kids. It was like, I was nervous. Veteran teachers saying, so nervous to have these kids come back. And once they're back, it's like, this is why I do this, right? And that's going to happen here in the school. So that is the most important thing, but we have to do that safely. We believe that with responsible students and staff, that we can do this safely. And our hope is that we do it so safely that we're able to come back sooner rather than later to full. Flexibility and understanding is the key to making this work. It's been that way so far. Our poor custodial staff has moved desks from one floor to another and then back to that other floor. And so if you're listening, guys, thank you. It's one of those things that we're going to continuously make changes because they make sense and they're better than what we thought. That's going to take teacher input. It's going to take student input. It's going to take parent input. This is not permanent. This is not ideal, and it's not permanent. We really look to improve on what we do. And we're confident that we can do this well. I'm confident that we can do it as well as anybody around. The HMS staff here, and I need to thank them over and over and over again, they care about your kids, and they have super high expectations for teaching and learning. For those parents who are worried about, for kids who are anxious, which is almost everybody, because what, teachers are anxious. We do a lot of talking about how to support your kids. We do a lot of talking about how to support each other, but we do a lot of that. We've been trained, multiple trainings actually, on what to look for social emotional well-being, strategies, techniques, how to talk to kids. And some of this is natural and some of it isn't, right? So, but our professional staff here, they're great at welcoming kids back. They made it a priority. The staff of Hanover, our teachers made it a priority to say, we want to come back to work. We know that kids need to be in school, and that some kids really need that to be successful. So they made it a priority. Our school committee made it a priority. Our administration made it a priority. And I think our community understands that. So I need you to know we want to be back. We want to make the best out of any situation, and we're going to make the best out of any situation. It may not be perfect. I am okay with not being perfect, but I'm going to strive for it. The people on the screen that you see up here with me, they like being perfect too. They don't want to waste any time with kids. They don't want to ruin any opportunities. And I feel the staff is the same way. So we have awesome kids, and they deserve our best. And that's what we're going to bring them. We are going to do this well, and we're going to have a great year. So with that being said, I realize there's probably 1,000 questions out there. And I will take this off. And Stephanie, let's get going on that.
Right. So you talked a little bit about first day of school and how there'll be some emails that are sent out with Zoom links. But
Yep.
I think this question is a little bit more general, and I think it's a good one. Will students be accessing all of their meeting links through Google Classroom, or will they have to look at emails too? And are we using Zoom exclusively?
So good question. I don't know about the exclusively, but everybody has a Zoom account. The district made an advanced, we have an advanced Zoom account. My hope is that they will access through Google Classroom, be able to access all the Zoom links. There's a lot of different ways, like so you can have recurring meetings so that the same homeroom at every time can get hit. I have to finalize that with staff to make sure that we're on the same page with that. But that is the goal, is to streamline the work so you're not getting 65 emails like the 5 I've sent you about tonight's meeting. That would be the hope.
Do students need to bring their laptops to school on the days that they're in person, and if so, why?
So great question. So yes, we would prefer that, because a lot of the work that we're going to be doing and collaborating between home and school, I mean, the kids at home and the kids in school would require that, as well as as when a lot of the writing that we're doing and the work that we're doing and the presentations that we're doing are done through that tool. So whether kids borrow their Chromebooks, which we did have pickup today, it was great. So thank you to our administrative staff and our custodians for making sure that kids got that. If you still need a Chromebook, please reach out. But the idea would be whether you borrow or you have your own, that we have our devices in school and out of school. We're going to look for creative ways to break away from that stuff. But they are a tool that I think is almost mandatory necessary now. So that is, I do worry about screen time as the school committee had mentioned. I do worry about that, and we're going to need to have assessed that. But Mrs. Miller said it is what it is, and I said that we can say that absolutely is what it is. But we're going to really work on doing this well.
Are our cohort A and B coordinated with the other buildings in the district?
For the most part, yes. There might be 1 or 2 students that are not, maybe by a parent request or because of individual need. But yes, that is the hope. If that isn't the case, please reach out and we will look at it. But I do believe we've coordinated really well with both center and the high school to kind of make that. That was hours and hours of work between administrators' guidance back and forth. But I do think, like rather than cutting the alphabet right in the middle, I think we did a good job with it. I really do. I realize not everybody's thrilled, and I realize I want all your kids back. So please, I would love everybody to be here all the days. But to safely do it's not possible.
Is there no longer a 6-day schedule?
So we have a COVID schedule right now. If we come back into the 6-day schedules, in some ways, and for in special education, a 6-day schedule still kind of exists because plans are that way, written that way for some individuals. But we're focusing on the 5-day schedule for ease for students and parents, and the way that the cohorts broke up. So we actually have a 5-day hybrid schedule. So a thing of the past is no, because we still haven't known it. And if we're back in full, we could revisit it, but it is another scheduling option we have.
I know you talked a little bit about mass breaks and things like that, but will kids be able to have a snack at some point during the day?
Yeah, so again, Nurse Joelle, you want to take this one as far as that goes?
Yes, so in the past, if we've had to have time for students to have a snack, what we've requested is that it be a fresh fruit or vegetable. The reason being just because of allergies in the classrooms, it's much easier to be able to tell what it is if it's a fresh fruit or vegetable, as opposed to having to read the back of a food label for the teachers, and not taking time away from learning doing that. That would be up to the teacher's discretion. If they feel that their students are needing a snack at some point during the day, they absolutely can work with me and we can make sure that that happens.
Thank you. There are some people raising hands. If people could just put their questions into the question and answer box, that would be really helpful. Let's see, email invites. We've got a couple questions here that if students get email invites to a Zoom or to like a Google Meet or Google Hangout, will those emails go to parents as well? And there's some concerns about some new students in the district that don't have email addresses yet.
Okay, so email addresses, we will look at that. And if you do not have one, please call us tomorrow, and that's a priority for tomorrow. I'm not aware of that, but I could understand that. As far as going to parents, Zooms are for kids. My guess is they're all going to be in Google Classroom links in their individual classrooms one way or another. So I don't necessarily know that we're going to have to send out those all the time. Do parents have access to them? Yes. I guess they could have access because as Ms. Bruin was in here earlier explaining, you have your kids' codes and things like that. I would like you to let your middle schoolers have that middle school life as far as it goes and have their class without you, but please know you can reach out to teachers anytime.
After school extra help. So will there be any extra help offered, and how will it be handled for students that are on virtual days versus in school days?
Yeah, we have not ironed that out because there's been a big push in the schedule. So we still have to do a little bit of work on that, but there's going to have to be opportunities where we are helping kids who need extra help. That will be built in. But my hope is that's also built into the time that we have in the day through our win block, through our, but I will tell you under this new schedule that kind of tweaked a little as far as how we use teacher prep time, but they will be able to get school help after school or at some point during the day.
This is a really good question. If a child has an appointment, like a dentist appointment, a doctor's appointment, it happens during the school day, but they're not going to be gone during the whole day, and they need to leave, but they're coming back and they're remote, they're at home. How should parents handle something like that?
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry,
So if a child has an appointment during the course of a school day, so
Yep.
if we're here on a regular in-person day, students might be dismissed to go to an appointment.
Yep.
If a child has an appointment and it's a remote day for that child, and then so how do they handle that?
So that's as far as right now, I would notify the teacher. I think this new platform gives us some real flexibility. One of the kids asked, so if I don't feel great, my mom doesn't let me go to school, can I still go home? Can I be part of the school virtually? And it does lend itself to do that. So I'm not positive on definitives with that, But I mean, just let the teacher know that you're not going to be present for that next class, or call the office and we will let her know.
Students with food allergies at lunch, is there a plan yet to where kids will be seated with food allergies? I don't know who wants to take this one.
Yeah, Joelle, I'll give that one to you too, but it's food allergies. Kids are, well, I'll let you go.
So the students will all be separated by 6 feet. So they'll have their own independent space, and they won't have to have a separate table for food allergies at this point, because they'll all have a separate table.
And you answered the questions about kids bringing their lunches from home. They can still do that, but we have the other option available to them. But there was a few questions in here about breakfast. So how would breakfast be served if kids have to go straight up to homeroom?
Good question. For kids who are going to have to go there first, we're still going to have them go in and out of that door. So you'd have to, let me revisit that, because the free breakfast one was kind of a new one to me today. I knew that we were getting lunch from yesterday. Mr. Barrett, is that something you discussed when you were talking with food service?
Food service has currently not made a plan for that directly, what that morning looks like. However, we do have a meeting tomorrow morning.
It may be something that the way I look at it is I don't want to break that, so we'd probably deliver it up, if that makes sense. That makes the most sense to me.
So a couple questions about pickup. So first of all, a little bit of clarification around what time pickup starts. So I'll throw that question at you first.
Pickup kids will be dismissed at approximately 2:13 as the earliest group that's going to go out. If I were picking up, knowing what I know, again, it's hard to judge what it's going to be like, because the buses are half full and the school's half full. So, but do we have a high percentage of kids being picked up and dropped off is one of those things that we're going to have to watch. But forever, people have been here about 40 minutes before we get out of school, which is not necessarily necessary, because what usually happens is that student's also the slowest one to get out of school. So that usually holds up traffic a little bit. At that time, you can pull up and pull in. If I were, I'd probably come in around 2:22, and there'd be no problems getting in or out. But that's totally up to you. Kids are going to be dismissed at 2:13.
If you're picking up your child, will your child be allowed to bring a friend home with them? So we're talking about like a ride share with a neighbor or something like that.
So I think we have to be realistic with that, and the answer, we're going to have kids that get dropped off and picked up based on need as far as it goes. What's going to have to happen is we're going to need people to be very honest with us about who is in what car should we reach out to a person. Because that's going to be one of those questions as we're contact tracing. Do you come to school with anyone else? Who are they? Right? Because that's going to be a real piece for us as far as that goes. Ideally, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have that be the case, but it can.
When will students be given their Chromebooks? I know, and actually, I shouldn't even say, you just answered that. Like, kids came and picked up their Chromebooks today. But again, if you guys need Chromebooks, please let us know, and we can have one available for you. Right, Joel?
Yeah, I'll just answer that real quick. So we sent out an email on Wednesday regarding to get back to us. We stopped that first invitation about 2:00 on Friday of last week and had people scheduled for grade level pickup, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th today for about 3 or 4 hours. If you have any questions regarding a Chromebook or you've missed that time, just send me an email. We have more Chromebooks. Obviously, it goes without saying we don't have Chromebooks for everyone. So we are encouraging Chromebooks to be brought from home if that's an option for you. However, if you do need a Chromebook, long and short, please reach out to me, send me an email, and I'll get back to you shortly and get something set up for tomorrow for you to pick up and be ready for that Wednesday day.
So, here's a good question. What about if science teachers are moving from classroom to classroom, how will students do science experiments?
That's one that we're going to have to be a little bit careful with, and because we're not really sharing supplies either. So I have some teachers who have said, so I can get 25 individual experiments for each kid or for each class or however that works, you know, even though we don't have a class size of 25, but they just said, can I independent? The idea of sharing supplies is not out. So there's going to have to be a combination between creativity and virtual for now. That's unfortunately the way it is. There's a virtual lab for just about everything out there right now, although that's not ideal. It is the safest way right now. And we use some virtual labs based on things that we don't have supplies for prior anyway. But not ideal. It's going to require, teachers are going to have cots that they travel with, so some of those supplies would be in there for that.
Joelle, this is a question for you. How do parents get medications to you, like for example, an EpiPen?
So you can reach out to me. I will be in the building tomorrow and Wednesday, and I can accept EpiPens. I will also be there in the morning. The next few days, I'm planning on setting a table up outside so that you can bring it directly to me.
If a teacher ends up having to Zoom into a class, how will parents be notified?
What do you mean?
So I think if I'm reading this question correctly, if you have a teacher that may be sick or is already Zooming in and we have to Zoom, and a teacher is Zooming in from home to the class, will parents be notified of that? And if so, how?
Good question.
I'm hoping I'm understanding this question correctly.
Yeah, so let me, how will they be notified? If you're talking about already, we have 4 who are doing it now. There's, we've notified, there's Mr. McGarry, who's 8th grade, Mrs. Haver, Mrs. Ray, and as well as Mr. Strela Mullen. So that's a 7th grade teacher, 2 8th grade teachers, and a specialist. Now, as far as in a given day, if a teacher has to quarantine, I mean, those are the types of things we're planning for, right? If a teacher can be healthy in quarantine versus a sub, and then of course the sub comes in, but the teacher would then work, is able to work because they're healthy, but they're quarantined. Yeah, there's a lot of different plays in that. I guess, let me think about that. I'm not positive yet on how that would be, because we wouldn't notify you if there was a sub, if that makes any sense, but necessarily. Yeah, let me think about that. That's a great question. Remind me to print these questions off just so we can answer them.
Are there any plans in place? This is another really good question. Are there any plans in place if there are internet issues? So if you have multiple children at home that are using the internet and there's limited support, and especially where attendance is mandatory.
So we've got a good, we were able to do MCAS for 500 kids last year. Not last year, 2 years ago. And it was, and we did get some upgrades to our system, and we'll be at half capacity here. So my hope is that we won't run into that issue here. As far as home, like anything else, nothing's perfect. We've all run into it. Where I'm in a meeting and it freezes. I think a quick email to your teacher or a message on your Google Classroom would be the way to go. A parent can communicate that. If we run into Wi-Fi issues, that's also something we want to know, because it's also something that we've helped a few families with. So what we know is it's not perfect, and then maybe if you have 3 kids at home doing that too, then maybe we need to look at how to support you there.
Let me see. Oh, so there's a concern about just kind of the safety of laptops and iPads and things like that, since kids can't lock things up in their lockers.
Right. I guess the good news is that they can't lock them up in their lockers, but nobody else is going into those rooms. You have your space. So that's kind of how it goes. We do have cameras in the hallways. So if anything were to be mistaken out of that room, we'd have that concern. It's a wonderful concern. I understand it. My bigger concern is the break-in piece. That's a hard piece. These devices are expensive. However, we need to think about how that goes. And kids generally try not to break their phones, although it happens. I guess cell phones is another good piece. Can kids bring their cell phones? Although I'm struggling with that as a parent, as my 7th grader has a cell phone now, which I'm not a fan of. Kids can take them and leave them off in their bag, with their water, with their other stuff. And we're going to have them that go off every once in a while. I'm going to ask teachers to understand that. And, but when it's a continuous problem, then Mr. Barrett and myself will have to deal with it. We're pretty nice guys and we're pretty reasonable with that, but it's one of those things.
Joelle, can you just go over a little bit about the protocol if we find out that someone is sick?
Absolutely. So this year we have 2 separate health offices, as Mr. Berolini mentioned. We have the well office, which will be for students with blisters, nosebleeds, students who need medication. And then we also have the special precautions area where we will do a full assessment on any student who has symptoms of COVID. This can be cough, shortness of breath, fever, fatigue, anything that's kind of related to COVID. That's where we would assess them. We will be taking into account history of seasonal allergies. We will be calling you and talking to you. If someone is found to be positive for COVID, that's why it's so important that we have the kids separated by these cohorts. If they test positive for COVID, we will be following the local Board of Health's recommendations, which as of today is 10 days from the date of the positive test, plus 3 days with a decrease of symptoms. That would also include no fever without the use of Tylenol or Motrin. As far as alerting people in that classroom, what we would do is we would perform the contact tracing, just like we have been doing all summer long for the whole town, and seeing who the close contacts are. A close contact is identified as someone who has been within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes. So that's what we're looking for. We would definitely make sure that in that contact tracing that we are following those guidelines and reaching out to you to make sure that you are aware. We did have the screening today for COVID for all staff members. That did include all substitute teachers. However, we are asking all staff and students to stay home if they are showing signs of COVID. We have a list of those on the school website if you need a refresher.
He's good.
He's awesome. Let's see. Are teachers equipped to troubleshoot in the event that there is an issue with a Zoom link?
So yeah, I mean, one thing we've learned from a lot for doing this is, so we've trained on Zoom, we've trained on Google Classroom extensively. We have some certified trainers that are here, some like experts that teach other adults as well as kids. As far as Zoom goes, I think we've all made enough mistakes already to know how to fix that. And I think that although how we message that if there is real technical difficulties, like something down with our internet or something like that, is something that we can get out relatively easy. I mean, myself, Mr. Barrett have hotspots that if teacher needed to send something out, we could go and make sure that that works, just to notify them that it's not perfect. I think that's an important piece. This is not perfect. It's not, we're getting better at it, and it's getting better, absolutely, but it's not perfect. So there were going to be breakdowns in areas where that comes up, and our job is just to take a look at what happened and try and make sure that it doesn't happen again, or rectify the issues.
The start time for Wednesday, so that's, and what time do we have kids log on? So I think you said that teachers will be sending home emails with Zoom invites.
So right now it's 7:45 to 11:15 is going to be the day for kids. It's broken up into their classes incrementally, mainly 30 and 35-minute classes, 35-minute classes for 5th grade and 30. We're still looking at if that's the best. But that is the current plan with that.
I've had a few questions on here about IEPs and services. And I will tell you that we are working really hard to make sure that IEPs are followed fully, and we're getting as close to 100% of their minutes followed as we possibly can. We are constantly evaluating the situation here within the district and looking at bringing kids back into the building for services. But that's definitely something that we're going to have to look at and phase in as we can. And again, always being cognizant of the health and safety measures here in the district. That's really our priority right now. But please know that the special education teachers and other service providers are working really, really hard to make sure that those IEPs are followed.
So our staff set a pretty high standard, and Mrs. Murphy, and actually the town in general, set a pretty high standard for special education expectations last year with the way that we supported it. Everything wasn't perfect, and I'm not saying that. And you know, again, virtual is not perfect for everybody. It's great for some people, and it's not perfect for everybody. But I would match our communication support to our special education students up there with anybody around last year. And with that being said, what we spent the summer talking about is how we improve. You know, what does that look like for a kid to Zoom in a room? I need to point out the priority is having kids in here. That is the priority. And we accomplished that better than anyone else around here too. The max is 2 days for everybody. A lot of local communities are 2 half days. We understand that. And it's actually the hardest to do. So I do understand we are going to work really hard to make sure that we communicate with students, parents, support them so that they have access to all the curriculum and all the services. But that's our goal. If we're not perfect, we're going to try and be as close to perfect as we can, and we will rectify that with families. Each individual here is so important to us. And that is the goal. And to be honest, we stress about that goal every day. I can speak for Mr. Barrett, myself, and really Mrs. Murphy, who, you know, is constantly trying to figure out how to get more kids back in the building on a more regular basis. But, you know, I think one of the important things is all kids learn. I think not all kids, but the majority of kids really benefit from being in school learning. And our district has made a commitment from the top down to say, we're going to try and maximize and do the most that we can safely. So I can't stress that enough. And our teachers sat down at the table and negotiated that piece, which a lot of places didn't do. I have hats off to our teachers. I'm so glad, because it's a partnership between, you know, for the community, and can't say enough good things about that.
Lots of questions in here about summer reading.
So we had a problem with the summer reading site. I do think I've got to look into that, but summer reading is an expectation. I know kids have been doing it. The actuality of it is we tried to match it with some intuitive thinking and some writing components, which I will clarify for kids when they get back here and clarify for parents, because the link was down for a couple days, and I'm not even sure that it's back up yet. So it is an expectation that kids were reading. It is an expectation that that there were products, but we will be more than flexible with dealing with individuals in this individual situations.
So specific questions about things like emails and Chromebooks. Is there a specific person that any questions should go to?
In regards to needing a Chromebook, Mr. Barrett has kind of taken the reins on that with our administrative assistants, and Pam Manning, who's done a ton of work for us to get this up and ready for the district. As far as other concerns, if you're not getting emails, Karen Oliver is the one who resets, or if you ever run into any Aspen problems, Karen Oliver, or email any one of our administrators. On a daily emails problem, I think communication with teachers is probably your first bet with needs, if you know, or a liaison or a homeroom teacher.
So if parents have any issues with connectivity, or if students are having trouble just kind of being on a Zoom session for whatever reason, whether it be health or whether it be just, again, connectivity issues, should they just send an email directly to the teachers?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is flexibility. It's not a perfect science for us, and I think teachers are going to be flexible. I know that parents are going to be flexible, and we're not going to tell kids we're going to be flexible, but we will be. You know, as far as that goes, it's not a perfect. We can't expect perfection out of an imperfect system. And there are too many unknowns and variables to say that we're going to be hard set on any one thing. You know, our job is if we run into an issue, we've got to try and figure out how to best rectify it. So communication's key.
Can you talk a little bit about what a mask break would look like and where would it be?
So ideally, our mask break, you want Joel, you can take it, but ideally our mask breaks would be outside. It's not a perfect scenario. Joel, go ahead. We're good at this.
So we're hoping to utilize the outdoor space as much as possible and have mask breaks be outside when weather permits. When it doesn't, we will have the mask breaks somewhere within the building. It may be in the classroom because the students will all be 6 feet apart. A close contact, as I said, is someone who is within 6 feet for 15 minutes. So we would make sure that those mask breaks would be keeping the students 6 feet apart for less than 15 minutes. And that's how we would accomplish that within the building. However, if a student happens to just need a mask break and it's not time for a class mask break, our teachers are very good at being able to read those cues and they can send them to me. We have other rooms available where they would be able to go and take a mask break if needed.
Let's see. After school activities like cross country and face and things like that.
So we're going to phase that stuff in. I can tell you that Kelly Lawrence, the most amazing thing, one of the most amazing things when I first got here, and I talk like I just started, which is not the case, but it's just one of those things, is cross country. And, you know, the idea of getting on buses and paying for multiple buses to go to a place doesn't seem feasible. And so we're going to be looking at the safeness for cross country to run our own. And we're going to be looking at what type of after school activities we can offer that from a virtual world and from a safe world. I think the one that really kills me, and I know it will be a question, is really band and chorus right now are really hard for us to figure out. And it's not something that the middle school band and the kids who are here that are as performers, we need to get back to that as soon as possible, but we have not found a way to figure it out. It's dependent on weather, and you have to be outside for X amount of feet, and it's just not. We're going to phase all of that stuff in and kind of get a judge for how well we do in school first, if that makes any sense. I do know that there are certain athletics that are opening up. We're going to be behind those.
Lots of questions about technology in terms of if your child is using an iPad, an Apple, or a Mac, so really it looks like there are a number of questions in here. Are students only able to use Chromebooks or?
No. So that's the wonderful thing about Google Classroom is if you can download the Google apps, and then it is actually it's just a link away. So it's really, the browser's easy as far as it goes. I can use it from my own iPhone. I can use it from my Mac. I can use it from my even actually from my iPad. You know, it does not have to be a MacBook. The program is for all devices.
And then in the classroom, charging devices during the day. Well, obviously the kids will be able to charge their devices.
They will. Well, that's an expectation. There are extra plugs around for a number of reasons.
So here's a really good question. If families initially elected to have their child be dropped off or picked up, at some point in the future, would kids be able to get on a bus?
So the answer, and Superintendent Ferrin and Assistant Superintendent Tom Rabb have been very clear. You got to give us some time, because we've got to kind of play with that. Some buses are more full than others. We're in a pretty good shape here. If you have elementary students, it's going to be a little bit tougher. But yeah, the idea is for right now, the idea is, yes, we hope that that's the case. It might take some reworking. What I can tell you is that there is a max right now. As far as we have space, but there is a max based on how many people we can come. We're hoping that gets adjusted, that around here it's healthy and we remain in the clear, and the guidelines from the state loosen up a little. But right now it's how to transport all of our kids by buses. But yes, absolutely, that is an option and a plan. So yes.
Joelle, this next two questions are for you. One is a quick one. only parents are allowed to drop off meds, yes or no?
So generally, yes. However, if it's a medication like an EpiPen, students do have the right to carry their own EpiPen, and they would be allowed to bring that into me. What I'm going to ask is that based upon your child's responsibility level and the ability for them to bring that directly to me, you either let me know that that's coming in via email, but we really prefer that parents drop medications off only. Any other medications would have to be dropped off by the parent.
And the next question is, if a child is ill, how does that, at home, how does that get handled if for the child to return to school?
So
I
I
don't
would,
know if it's necessarily a COVID question, if it's just ill in general.
right, and we're going to have illnesses throughout the year. I would just ask that you touch base with me, let me know what's going on. There's a reason we have 2 nurses this year. We're very fortunate to be able to have that. Utilize us as your resource and just let us know what's going on. We can work together to make the safest decision for both your child and the other students in the school.
I'm just reading through. I'm just basically trying to vet out things that we've already answered. Flexibility around missed classes for different reasons. Again, we're just reaching out to teachers to let people know situations. Can anything be left in homeroom to lighten the load in the backpacks on remote days?
So yes, if that absolutely, they can check with their teachers and leave. Someone had mentioned the possibility of leaving that blanket in their desks or something like that, which would make sense. Although every once in a while it would need to be cleaned, I would think. But yeah, there's different materials that you can have. They literally own, they are in charge of their desks. There's nobody else sitting at them. So that's a possibility.
Is a camera required for Zoom? So do all students need to be on camera?
Good question. My natural reaction says yes, but my common sense says if there's an issue, that's something that we can work out with a parent and a student and a teacher as far as that goes. There may be times when that wouldn't be, when that may not be mandatory, but my gut feeling says, well, without having a conversation about it, yes. But if we have a conversation, it's a reasonable accommodation should there be something that arises.
Homework. Any more? So there's questions about, will there be the same amount of homework? Is homework an expectation? So kind of lots of different questions in here.
So we're learning remotely for half the time. I think it's really about work and might be project-based, might be any type of work. If you didn't finish the schoolwork, then it's going to have to, it's being done. It's going to have to be done. So I think the expectation is that kids are working outside of their day. But we're not definitive on what we still have a little bit of work on what that expectation is. So not definitive, but the expectation is when we provide work that it's to be done. Some kids will be able to do it in class and some people will rush and do it in class. Some people will take their time and do it really well. And that's the idea would be task completion and how well a student wants to demonstrate their understanding on any given task.
Is all of the instruction going to be live? So I'm guessing that this question has to do with remote days.
So in remote days, again, it's going to be, so every lesson, there is a live portion of every lesson, meaning it could be attendance in an overview of what a kid's supposed to do. So again, it's going to go from, if I am a teacher, I have 9 kids in front of me. I have 9 kids at home, maybe 10 or 11 or 8, however that works out for family reasons or just how the hybrid worked, which is a different piece. But at the minimum, the kids are zooming in. I open up the Zoom. There is attendance. I check in with those kids just as I would if they were walking in. And they could say, okay, do you guys know what you're supposed to be doing today? That could be the lesson, or it could be the other extreme, which would be a whole room in Zoom complete lesson, and then really anything in between. When we just discuss this with the teachers, we're not sure what best practice is, and it's probably not best practice all the time to have people staying on the computer just to stay on when they could be working and actively engaged in something else, or in the lesson, but not on screen, if that makes sense.
If at some point the school becomes all in person,
Yes.
will virtual academy still be an option?
So virtual academy right now is a year process. So yes, as long as we still have the kids that we're going to do it, that was a year commitment from the state.
Let's see. I'm just going through and trying to find questions that are really different that we've kind of answered a lot of these. Full remote day, the schedule is still the same as it would be during a regular school day?
No, it's a half-day schedule. So in part of our agreement with the staff is that it's a half-day and a half-day for professional development and growth for teachers. So it's an abbreviated schedule. You'll have all your courses, unless teachers notify otherwise that they have a different plan for this day, which is a total possibility. But you have all your courses for a shortened period of time, and at 11:15 you break for lunch, and then you're back to complete the work at the end of the day. So that schedule, we're having a little bit of trouble getting into X2, and my hope is that I can work with Mr. Plummer to create that afternoon idea of just a framework for kids to work under.
Are you talking about just on Wednesdays, or are you talking about every day that child is fully remote?
Wednesday. On Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, it's like a regular class day.
Mm-hmm.
There is some flexibility in our virtual academy for those virtual academies who have to jump off and go to Mrs. For 7 and 8 who need to go to Mrs. Ireland. Please do so, and I hope this was helpful. But for 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 virtual academies, there is a little bit of different leeway. There's still attendance and there's still coursework, but their coursework for 7 and 8 looks more like the high school than it does for here.
If a student takes a trip out of state, is there a proper notification process for the return?
Depends on if I'm invited or not. Joelle, you want to?
We're actually working on creating a protocol for that, and that should be out shortly. Right now, we would follow the state's guidelines. So if you're going to a higher risk state, quarantining for 2 weeks at this point.
We answered some questions here about technology.
For those of you who are listening as we're looking through, to be answering these questions and only be 2 days away is really exciting for us.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things that's to make it real. Once we get back, we're going to have things that work and things that don't, but we're going to fix them and we're going to make it the best place that it can possibly be. I don't think there's a stronger staff around who has a knowledge of the kids, and I can't wait to get used to and get to meet our 5th graders a little bit more than we have. But welcoming kids in, understanding and having high expectations, meeting that social emotional, a lot of parents have asked about first. Those social emotional needs are key. Again, in hierarchy of needs, kids have to feel safe. They have to be fed and feel safe. So those things are I think we're pretty good at. And then we have to build on making connections with kids. And I think our staff is phenomenal at that. Mm-hmm. And because it's in person as opposed to places that are not, we're going to have a much better job at that already. Starting in the way we've done it has already been 10 times better. So exciting. It's exciting.
I'm getting some questions about evaluations for IEPs and special education services.
So if you want to take it, or me, I know that we started them the other day, so.
That was basically what I was about to say. We did start them, and we're going to move through them as quickly as we possibly can. We please ask for your patience and flexibility, as we do have quite the backlog from last March. So we are working to get through those as quickly as we can. I've asked all of our evaluators here in the building to notify parents as their child's evaluation is coming up, so that parents know when it's about to start, when it will start, and kind of have an idea of, as we get closer, when the meeting time would be. We are still required to follow the timelines, and we're doing that to the best of our ability. But please understand, if we have some students that were supposed to be evaluated last March. That's going to take us a little bit of time to catch up. So we are moving through those as quickly as we can. It is a very strong team of evaluators that we have, and we're looking forward to being able to provide you that information as soon as possible.
We are lucky to have a new school psychologist who's doing a lot of our testing, Ashley Mitchell, who is a Hanover resident and a fantastic employee and a super talented person. So happy to have her on board. She is so knowledgeable, and with Miss Murphy and our special education teachers really round off a solid special education team. So thank you.
I think that there's, as I kind of read through these, there's lots of questions that, can you walk us through what a remote day would look like? I think a lot of it, what will testing, like a classroom assessment look like? And I think I'm not trying to speak for you, Dan, but I think that some of that is going to be a little bit difficult to answer because it's really going to depend on the classes, the teachers. I understand everybody wants to know, as much information as possible, but I think kind of as we go through this, we have some really, really, really talented teachers in this building that are extremely creative, and even when it comes to assessing our students. So I think I don't want to speak for anybody, but I find it a little bit tricky to answer questions like that because sometimes an answer that I give you isn't going to be anywhere near as great of an experience as the kids will get from the teachers themselves. So.
Again, thank you. The expectation, I couldn't have said it better. The expectation is that kids are involved in their period every time. The Department of Education does not say that we have to room and Zoom. It doesn't say the people who are truly remote have to room and Zoom. For whole periods and lessons to meet kids' needs as far as it goes. We're looking at best practices in a combination of all the above. And we're going to meet with staff to discuss that. We're going to listen to parents, and we're going to see what works with all of those things. We're writing our own playbook. There's not a how to do hybrid and COVID anywhere, or remote learning for dummies, whatever book it is. They don't have that. We're trusting we've trained our staff. We've trained with our staff because our staff is really good. And they've been really reflective, responsive, and innovative to kind of come up with and create different ways to assess kids, to work with kids, to engage kids. And we're going to see all those great things. We're going to continue to evolve. I mean, they're excited about it. It's not an ideal situation, but there's a lot of positives coming out of this.
And again, there's lots of really specific questions in here. And so I just kind of want to direct parents to talk with with the teachers when school starts, but specific questions about 8th grade math. I think some specific questions from families that are probably best answered directly by the teacher. Mm-hmm. So I'm just gonna, if I skip any questions, please understand that I'm trying to go through these and answer as many as we can for the broadest range of people that we can, because I know lots of people have lots of questions. If a family member, Ms. Casey, really quick, if a family member is exhibiting symptoms, should the child be kept home from school? So if it's not the child that is exhibiting symptoms, but a family member.
Honestly, I would ask that this year we err on the side of caution. So depending what those symptoms are, depending on the history, where you have been, who you've been exposed to, yes, you may want to keep that student home. Again, you can call me and we can talk about that. If you know that your child has been exposed to someone who's tested positive, and you know that they have been a close contact, been within that 6 feet for greater than 15 minutes, you will want to keep that child home and quarantine for the 14 days. But again, just reach out to me and we can make sure that we're all making the right decision and what's in the best interest for your student and the other students.
Thank you. So it looks like as I scroll kind of up and down through all of these questions, I hope that that we answered as many as we could that were for as many people as we could get to. A lot of questions were answered kind of throughout the presentation. So I have a lot of people in here that asked very, very similar questions, even though we have quite a few questions in our question and answer
So
box.
we'll look at those questions, and anything we didn't answer, we'll try and get out some in a kind of a Q&A form, if that makes sense. So Mr. Ryerson, if you're listening, two things. We need to put this video out. There's a number of parents who couldn't make it tonight. So if you could help with that, make that the tape of this available. And then two, if we could get the log for the questions, just so we can go through them and answer anything else. So to everybody who's out here tonight, thank you to the three of you for hanging in there with me and helping out and all the work you've done. So it's an amazing task, and I do challenge. I'm excited because I think we're going to do this one well. I think we need to do this one well. And for parents out there, your kids are important to us. Their learning's important to us. Their safety's important to us. And if I could take you on a tour through the room now, you'd see the cool setups as far as it goes. Actually, maybe I'll just do that as far as it goes so you can see what it's if I give you a headache by my moving around, I apologize, but it's a risk I'm willing to take. But if you walk in to our front main office, I'll show you. Mrs. Carvin is at the front, so we'll still have a mechanism for you to drop off things. It will probably be outside under the canopy, so if it's raining, it will be fine. But as you can see as we come in, there is our safety protected Mrs. Carvin's desk, who is wonderful, and she'll answer anything that you come in. Now, if you come in, everything is down there. Thank you for wearing a mask. If you go up here, the positive messaging that Mr. Barrett has put up, it's believe in yourself, please stay to the right. Just positive all over the place. Every new day is a blank canvas. If you see on the floor, there's places to walk. There's signs that say it. Even the wrong way signs are, oops, wrong way, please stay to the right. We have it on the stairs. There are signs heading up. Make sure that you stay. It's really your kids' first priority. And the second priority is to provide the quality education that they deserve under any circumstance. So with that being said, have a wonderful night. We appreciate you all hanging in there. And we are at this for real in 2 days. So that is pretty awesome and pretty exciting. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.